probably think the Allis-Chalmers 3500 was banned, right? Well, I went through 67 websites and spent 14 hours researching to double-check that. And what I learned completely changed everything I thought I knew about that engine. Was it actually banned, or was it even actually a no-emission control engine? Let's find out. The Allis-Chalmers 3500. Even the name sounds big and strong. If you grew up around farms, heavy equipment, or military gear, there's a good chance you've heard that deep, rumbling sound it makes. People who worked with it will tell you it was tough, simple, and built to last. But if you search around online today, you might hear something else too, people saying, that engine was banned. That's the kind of claim that makes you stop and wonder, why would anyone ban an engine? Was it dangerous? Did it pollute too much? Or is this just one of those stories that gets bigger each time it's told? The truth is, the 3500 was never officially banned. It's still out there, still running in some places, and still remembered fondly by people who used it. The real story is a mix of history, changing rules, and a little bit of misunderstanding. Farmers loved it. Soldiers trusted it. But could the same thing that made it strong also be the reason people thought it was banned? The Allis-Chalmers 3500 engine was like a big, strong heart for tractors. It was what farmers counted on to get the work done day after day. This engine was called a 6-cylinder turbo diesel, which means it had 6 large chambers inside called cylinders, where air and fuel mixed and exploded to make power. The turbo part meant it had a fast spinning fan that pushed in extra air so it could make even more power. That made it much stronger than a regular engine of the same size. When people talk about size in engines, they often use cubic inches or liters. The 3500 was 426 cubic inches in size, which is about 7.0 liters. To help you picture that, think of it as the space taken up by 6 big milk cartons. The bore, or the width of each cylinder, was 4.25 inches. The stroke, which is how far the piston moves up and down inside the cylinder, was 5 inches. These numbers might sound small, but inside an engine, they mean a lot of space for making power. When the engine was working at full speed, it ran at about 2,200 RPM. That means all its parts were spinning and moving 2,200 times each minute. At that speed, it could make around 120 horsepower, which was enough strength to pull heavy farm tools, power grain combines, or run other big machines. To keep it happy, the 3500 needed plenty of oil and water. It held 15 quarts of oil to keep its parts slippery and moving without wear, and 31 quarts of coolant to stop it from overheating. The firing order of the 3500 was 1-5-3-6-2-4. This was like the engine's dance steps, telling each cylinder exactly when to fire, so the whole thing ran smoothly. People liked this engine because it was tough, simple, and could last for years if cared for. It powered big tractors like the D21 Series 2, which Allis-Chalmers made from 1965 to 1969. It also worked in other tractors such as the 210, 220, and 8000 series, as well as in large combines and even wheel loaders. On farm forums, some owners remembered running the 3500 until it wore out and then replacing it with other engines like Cummins diesels, just to keep the machine going. Others said parts were not too hard to find, which made it easier to keep them running. These engines were not just locked in museums, they worked hard in the fields, sometimes for decades. The 3500's history goes back even further. In 1953, Allis-Chalmers bought the Buda Engine Company, which had been making diesel engines for years. The designs from Buda became the foundation for later Allis-Chalmers engines, including the 3500. That connection to older proven designs was part of why the 3500 became known for strength and dependability. The 3500 had 2 main careers in its life. The first was on farms. Allis-Chalmers tractors with the 3500 under the hood could pull heavy plows, haul wagons full of crops, and run all day long without slowing down. Farmers liked them because they were reliable and simple to work on. You didn't need a computer to figure out what was wrong, just a good wrench set and a bit of know-how. The second career was in the military. The U.S. Army used the 3,500 in big generators called MEP-006A units. These weren't little portable generators you'd take camping. They were massive machines that could power an entire military camp, a field hospital, or even a radar station. Soldiers liked them because they could run in tough conditions and keep going no matter what. So if it was so good at its job, why would people think it was banned? That's where the no emission control label comes in. Back when the 3,500 was made, there were very few rules about what kind of exhaust a farm tractor or a military generator could put out. The focus was on making them strong, reliable, and easy to fix. That meant the exhaust pipe on a 3,500 sent out whatever came from burning diesel fuel, black soot, smoke, and gases like nitrogen oxides. These things aren't great for air quality or for people's lungs, but at the time, nobody had laws forcing companies to filter them out. Today, we have much stricter rules for new diesel engines. If you look at a modern tractor or generator, it will probably have a diesel particulate filter or DPF to catch soot, an SCR system to spray DEF fluid into the exhaust to clean it, and an EGR system to recycle some exhaust back into the engine to reduce nitrogen oxides. The 3,500 didn't have any of that. It wasn't because Allis-Chalmers forgot or didn't care. Those technologies simply didn't exist in farm and military engines back then. That's why people today sometimes look at it and say, it had no emission control. Here's the key point though. Just because it didn't have those systems doesn't mean it was banned. In the 1990s and 2000s, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, started phasing in tier standards for new off-road diesel engines. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4. Each tier made the limits for smoke and gases stricter, but these rules applied to new engines being made and sold after certain dates. Older engines, like the 3,500, were usually grandfathered. That means they were allowed to keep working under the rules they were built with. Think of it like a school making a new rule that all new backpacks must have reflectors. If you already have an older backpack without a reflector, you don't have to throw it away. You can keep using it. That's how the EPA rules worked for old engines. They didn't go out and take them away. They just made sure any new engines from that point forward were cleaner. The confusion comes when people hear that you can't sell a new engine like that anymore and think it means you can't use that engine anymore. Those are two very different things. You could still run your 3,500 on your farm or in your private workshop. You just couldn't make a brand new one without the modern clean air systems. In some places, like big cities or certain job sites, there are local rules that might say you can't run older engines here, but that's a local limit, not a nationwide ban. It's also worth mentioning that engines like the 3,500 were built to last a very long time. That's why you can still find them today in working condition. Farmers might have one in a shed ready to use for a heavy job. Collectors restore old tractors with the 3,500 and show them off at fairs. Military surplus stores still sell MEP-006A generators with the 3,500 inside. You wouldn't see all that if the engine were truly banned. Another reason people call it no emission control is that the 3,500 makes visible smoke when it's working hard. Newer engines with filters and treatment systems often have almost invisible exhaust. But in the 1970s, a little black puff when the engine started or when it pulled a heavy load was normal. In fact, some old-timers say they miss that sound and smell because it reminded them of hard work getting done. What really comes out of an engine's exhaust? It's more than just smoke, and one part of it might surprise you. Let's talk about what emissions really are in simple words. When you burn fuel in an engine, the leftover gases and particles have to go somewhere. They go out the exhaust pipe. Some of it is just harmless steam. But diesel engines also make soot, which is tiny black dust, and nitrogen oxides, gases that help create smog. These things can hurt people's lungs and make the air dirtier. That's why, starting in the late 20th century, governments decided to make rules to lower those emissions in new engines. The Allis-Chalmers 3500 came long before those rules. It wasn't breaking any law when it was built, because the laws didn't exist yet. When the laws came, they applied to engines being made after that time. That's why we say it was grandfathered. It's like saying, this is how we did things before the new rule, and that's okay as long as we're not making new ones like that now. One of the neat things about the 3500 is how simple it is compared to modern diesels. Today's engines have sensors, computers, and delicate filters. The 3500 had strong steel parts, a simple fuel system, and a big turbocharger. If something broke, you could fix it with hand tools. That's part of why the military liked it. In the middle of nowhere, a soldier with basic tools could keep it running. No need to plug it into a laptop to find out what was wrong. Of course, the downside of that simplicity is that it isn't as clean or as fuel efficient as newer engines. If you ran a 3500 in a city every day, it would make more smoke and use more fuel than a modern engine of the same size. But on a farm or in a remote area, those trade-offs didn't matter much at the time. So, was the Allis-Chalmers 3500 ever banned? Number. Was it replaced by cleaner technology and new engines? Yes. Does it have a place in history as a tough, reliable workhorse? Absolutely. The banned rumor probably started because people saw that you can't make a new engine like that anymore and assumed the old ones had to be gone too. But as long as you follow local rules, you can still run one today. And that's the big lesson here. Sometimes a story gets told in a way that makes it sound more exciting than the truth. Banned sounds dramatic, but phased out for cleaner designs is what really happened. The Allis-Chalmers 3500 wasn't an outlaw. It was a product of its time, doing its job well until newer designs took over. So that's a wrap, guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like it. Also hit the subscribe button if you don't want rumors about your life, just like the 3500 had on its